about developing natural resources
fine.
right here at home. I'll tell you this, I will challenge anyone. If we have an opportunity to be able to create American jobs on American soil, to be able to put Americans back to work, and to be able to create an energy certainty for the United States of America with American resources, I'll stand and I'll fight for that every day of the week. Okay?
You know, I know that some of the folks at the radio show have asked me, and I took this opportunity to ask the question. After this last Keystone vote, and I know Mike brought this up, that almost got through the Senate. And I think it missed passing by 2 votes. They needed 60 to go through. First of all, I'm not certain either one of our senators voted for it. And secondly is, what kind of fallout was that from being out there? I know it cost the president a lot to do that. What kind of happened after that vote?
You know, after that vote, I think, there was a lot of dismay simply because of the recognition of the importance of being able to put people literally back to work. And I think, unfortunately, the president put himself in a position that politics became more important than the people, became more important than driving Americans to some energy certainty for this country. And I think that he needs to be reminded of that on a daily basis, because this is about jobs, it is about the economy, and one of the ways we're going to get ourselves out of this great recession, the highest job loss since the Great Depression in this country. We're sitting in the county, did the figures, official figures yesterday, say 9.7, is that correct? 9.6 in Mesa County. If we factor in the underemployed, we're in double-digit figures. We're seeing that throughout the 3rd Congressional District. And I think this is a failure of leadership out of the White House. The president put on pressure. Those 2 additional votes out of the Senate, I think, would have been available, and then simply would have taken the signature, and Americans would have been back to work. So. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I have a question. We're faced with the most important election that I have ever seen in my lifetime, and I've seen a lot of elections. But it seems that our president is trying to bring in millions of illegal immigrants that can vote without showing any ID. And how can you stop this stacking the deck, as I will call it, so that we have a fair election and not a bunch of illegals electing Obama again?
You know, and a lot, as I know, our elections are administered at the local level. What you're speaking about is in terms of is the territorial integrity of the United States something we're standing up for, and it is. I met over in Pueblo with the Latino Chamber of Commerce, and we are in harmony that we need to be able to secure the borders of the United States. And I'll invite you, I think one of the ways that we can truly address that, we've got a couple of programs that are out there right now. There's one called E-Verify. It's something that I will certainly look at, probably vote for if it does get to the floor. But it has a weakness in that it just pulls up a name. And there may be 10,000 Scott Tiptons in this country, but we don't know which one. And I want to be able to create certainty for the business community. And so a piece of potential legislation that we're working on, I've arranged a meeting with Leader Canner and the woman whose idea it actually is, Helen Kriebel, homegrown solution, by the way, out of Colorado, out of Parker, Colorado, called redcardsolutions.com if you want to look that up. I would certainly welcome your input on it. The benefit of this is it's effectively a verifiable program for people that are coming in. You and I probably remember the days when we had the Brasaro program, and we had migrant workers that would come in, help be able to get the crop out of the field. And once that crop was in, you'd move on to the next location, the next location. At the end of the harvest, people would go home. And now we have a situation, I think, to where we have secured the border to a degree. People are afraid to go back home. And so let's create something that's going to work for this country, that is going to be verifiable, to be able to address concerns. I've talked down in Montrose, down in Olathe, people worried about being able to get the corn in. And they posted the job, they can't get people to work, so we need some folks to be able to come in and actually do that work. If we're gonna get those harvests out of the field, but it must be verifiable, and going back to the election end of this as well, I know they've got several bills to try and address that in the Colorado State Legislature, that we'll be looking at, and it is going to be a state decision. But I think the sanctity of our vote, and making sure that our elections are fair and proper, and that those who vote have a legitimate right to vote is something we've got to be standing up and protecting. And we'll see, I think, a variety of different legislative pieces moving in through the state, but that is a role that the federal government can do in fulfilling the obligation that it should have had from the beginning, making sure that if you're in this country, you are here legally, be it by visa, work permit, or you've immigrated legally as well.
What about Second Amendment and arms control order? A lot of people get concerned about firearms and control issues. Any information on what's going on with that, treating offenders at the border differently than offenders elsewhere?
Yeah, you know, this has been very frustrating. In fact, I signed a letter calling for Eric Holder to resign. You know, when we look at the Fast and Furious program that was going on, and the accountability, you know, effectively at the federal government, putting a lot of people that are just in business in a bad situation unnecessarily. We've got to be able to protect our Second Amendment rights. I'm really proud to be able to tell you, my wife and both my daughters now have a concealed carry permit. So I treat her with a lot more respect now. She really will. But, you know, we continue to see, and originally when this started to break, we saw some of the calls that were coming out that we needed more gun control out there. You know, I'd still love to truly be able to see a study, and if anyone has heard of one, I'd love to be able to hear about it, that when you get into rural America, where we live, to where, you know, having a gun is part of our lives. We like to go out and hunt. We like to go out and target shoot. Just like to have one around for our own personal security. On a per capita basis, we have lower violent crime. I'd be willing to submit, probably just intuitively, I can't back it up right now, but I'd be willing to bet that it's actually lower. The right of this citizenry to be able to have Second Amendment rights can be inhibited when we start making different rules in different areas of the country. And this gets down, bottom line, I think, to the federal government fulfilling its obligations along our border, federal government making sure that it is not creating scenarios to where people are put in a bad position of guns that get into the wrong hands. And I think this administration and Eric Holder have to be held accountable for it. Yes, ma'am.
I actually gave Scott my 3 questions, but if you could address HR 347 and the 8 to 10 page questionnaire that Obama set out for, like, the Tea Parties have to fill out. Glenn Beck says, I refuse to comply. I want to know what your suggestions is.
Yeah, I think this disturbing is something that, we want to reach out and find out, because it seems like the Tea Parties in this country were being targeted. Are you really what you say you are? Are you a nonprofit? Look what happened with Acorn. How long did that take? And we didn't see the federal government jumping through the hoops. Let me tell you my experience with Tea Parties with 9/12 groups. These are people who love the country. These are people that pick up trash after themselves when they show up on the National Mall to hear a speaker, and there's not one arrest. These are citizens that believe in the rule of law, people that believe in the sanctity of our individual liberties as well. And so for them to be individually challenged, I think this is worthy of holding a hearing on. I know that a couple of members, as this started to break, visited with Darrell Issa, who is on the Oversight Committee, to be able to look in that. And it ought to be great fun to really see the IRS pulled in terms of accountability of why and who's directing this. And I think we will see some action on that through that committee. And that's how the committees are just kind of broken up. And then what's 3477? You're going to have to be here.
I've got don't know the title of it, but that's
Yeah,
the
it's
one that
important.
there's only 3 people that voted against that in the House.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, effectively with that piece of legislation, I think only 3 members, Justin Amash, Ron Paul, and who?
Paul Brown.
And Paul Brown were the only no votes on it. And what that was, it's, I think that's one that, if you actually read the bill, have you looked at that bill? And read it?
Are you talking?
Yeah.
Not the whole thing.
Yeah, take a look at that, because we looked at it as well. We want to make sure that there's access, obviously, to public figures. You see how we conduct ourselves. And we want to be able to do that. But what this was geared around a lot more is it was a request primarily, if my recollection and understanding of it was, with the Secret Service, with the perimeters that they have, to make sure that somebody didn't have the opportunity to bust through that. You know, they've got a certain security measure that they have to have. And that was pretty much the extent of it. And we'd had a fair amount of discussion on it, and a lot of people that I respect, Jim Jordan, a number of other folks from the RSC, when we looked at this, this was a benign piece of legislation that was just to make sure that in some of those security details and the like, and even on the home, you know, somebody shouldn't be able to get on your front lawn and get your private residence. You've got private property rights as well to be able to protect on that. So,
I think the question is, and it's probably coming from Ron Paul, is that we could lose our First Amendment rights with that.
yeah.
He's trying.
Pardon me?
The right to assemble.
Yeah, right to assemble. Again, you know, I'd encourage you to take a look at that. I don't read it that way. And Mr. Paul is certainly free to make his interpretation of it. I happen to disagree. I think he's overreaching in terms of that, because I guarantee you, well, first of all, that is a constitutionally protected right on that. And, you know, you would see, I think, Congress at large standing up to make sure that that is protected. And I think he's actually misreading what that legislation was really about. Okay, you bet.
Yeah, Scott, unfortunately, I'm trying not to be negative about this, but I think conflict between Israel and Iran, at least with me, it's almost imminent. What kind of impact is that going to cause on America? We can't afford it, obviously, to send more troops anywhere, but are my fears well-founded about it? As Congressman, are you guys talking about what I think might be the inevitable, and if so, militarily, how are we gonna afford this? What's Congress, that's the discussion back there, because we will be involved, and I'm convinced of that, one way or another. Doesn't matter who shoots first either.
You know, you would like to think, and I don't think we can rest probably a lot of hope on Ahmadinejad's integrity and common sense.
Yeah.
You know, they are on the cusp of developing